Welcome to the Jackson Rudolph podcast. I am your host, Jackson Rudolph, and this is episode 46, brought to you by Black Belt Magazine. And today we have a really exciting episode for you guys. You'll notice that once again, the podcast is on the road because I'm in a hotel room with this weird lighting setup. And we're going to be talking about where I'm headed to a little bit in today's podcast because our guest is none other than Hollie Hamm. She is a very successful school owner of Resolute Martial Arts in Destin, Florida, and she is also the promoter of the Destin Open, which is this weekend. I've known Miss Hamm for a long time as I've been coming to teach seminars at her school, and we're going to be getting into that as well. But been teaching her kids for many, many years now. And so we're going to dive into all kinds of topics from the Destin Open to sport karate competition to school owning and martial arts business and all of those really cool things. But first, I want to allow Miss Hamm to introduce herself a little bit more. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, and maybe just give our audience a little bit of perspective. How did this all get started for you? What's your martial arts story?
Well, thanks for having me, Jackson. Excited to be here. If you want to know the truth, I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. That's why, that's how I got into this. Michelangelo, to be specific. I wanted to be a Ninja Turtle really bad when I was a kid. And my parents tried to talk me into doing more girly sports at first. And I was just avid that, no, I want to do karate. I want to be a Ninja Turtle. And I finally got them to break down and let me do it when I was about 9. I was all in from day one. And I started competing shortly after. Loved that. And I got my black belt at about 12. System-wise, I'm basically a Joe Corley descendant. I started at UMAS Karate in Covington, Georgia. It was my first job working there too. I started teaching when I was about 12 too, and I fell in love with that. The being able to give back part was just so fulfilling to me, and teaching was just this whole other realm that I fell in love with. And I was lucky enough to go to United Professionals Enrollment Director College and instructor training and all that, because my school owner was awesome and he sent me to all that stuff when I was really young. And so then I became the enrollment director at the school when I was 15, which is really great, and head instructor when I was like 16, I think. But then I went off to college. And I'm sure you can identify with this, Jackson. You still have that itch, and I just missed being in the school all the time like I was for so many years, and I just didn't know what to do with myself. So there really wasn't a school around for me to go train at. So then I started doing just like a free kickboxing class in the common area of my dorm and just to scratch my own itch pretty much. But my friends would just jump in there and do it with me, and that was fun. But so then I ended up getting a job actually selling advertising for Cumulus Radio, of all things. And so then I was looking through what industries I know and who I could pitch. And I came across this guy that owned a group of ATA schools. And I was like, I know your business, so let me go and pitch you. And so then that ended up turning into me doing all of his marketing. He offered me a job doing that. So then that's how I kind of got back into the industry, and never left after that, obviously. So that's where I belonged.
Absolutely. And I feel like so much of our audience, because obviously the vast majority of our audience are martial artists, right? And I feel like so many of us can relate to that story, especially like starting wanting to be a Ninja Turtle or wanting to be a Power Ranger or wanting to be a superhero, right? That's how it starts for everybody. And then I feel like so many martial artists see themselves, going on and doing something else, maybe what their parents wanted them to do or whatever, but then something always brings them back around to martial arts, right? So I feel like a lot of our viewers can definitely sympathize with that. And so you had the very successful school that we're going to talk about in more detail in the latter half of the podcast. But let's talk about what's happening right now, because you've also used your martial arts experience to become a very successful tournament promoter. The Destin Open is going to be coming up this weekend, and none other than the beautiful Destin, Florida, right? So just tell us a little bit about that. Go ahead and give us the rundown on date, time, what all is going to be going on. Just tell us about it.
Yeah, super excited this weekend, the Destin Open. It'll be our second annual, and we're pumped. It's an open karate, sport karate tournament here in Destin, Florida. It is a Pro Mac event as well, and we are super pumped. So there's competition this Friday and Saturday, the 20th and 21st. The turnout, I mean, the support has just been overwhelming, well beyond what I could have imagined for this year, especially. So, I mean, the competition is going to be just top notch. We've got 20 different states represented as of right now. So super excited. I'm excited to see everybody again. And I think everybody's just ready to tournament, so, but it should be a great weekend.
Absolutely. I know everybody's itching to get back out there. And that's one thing that I find really impressive, or really two things. Number one, you mentioned this is the second annual Destin Open. It's not very often that somebody in their second year of having a tournament is able to have such a well-attended event as you guys expect to have. And I think a lot of it is based on the professionalism and the quality of the event that was shown last year. And I think that a lot of people noticed that, and either whether they attended last year or whether they saw everything on social media about it. I think that that's one thing that a lot of the competitors, the spectators, the families really respected and appreciated when making the decision to come to Destin Open this year. And then the second half of that is running this tournament in the time that we're in, as unprecedented as it is with the COVID-19 pandemic and everything else, and the courage and the leadership that takes to be able to put on an event and do it the right way. And we also see an interesting phenomenon here where I think that for the past several years, even though ProMac kind of has tournaments all over the eastern side of the United States and over into the Midwest and, of course, all of that, ProMac has largely been considered a regional circuit. But now we're seeing a lot of national competitors that are going to be kind of national world level competitors that are going to be coming to the Destin Open and competing in a ProMac event. And so that's something that I think is very interesting moving forward as well. As we know, other leagues have had to cancel so many events because of the pandemic, but ProMac has been able to continue hosting events from the Battle of Atlanta, everything in between up to the Destin Open. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of develops. But before we get into that and talking about the COVID situation and everything else, go ahead and let's rewind a little bit. What inspired you to start this in the first place? What inspired you to kind of take that jump and be a promoter and put on an event?
Well, Jax, I don't know if you remember this, but it was actually your mother that first put the idea in my head, believe it or not. You were here at my school several years ago, and she was here too. And we were talking, I think, I don't even remember how the conversation came about, but I think we had just had an inter-school tournament because we had always done those. And we were talking about it. And your mom says, well, hey, why don't you have a tournament? Why don't you do one? And I was like, well, yeah, I do. We do the inter-school ones. Yeah, I do that. And she's like, no, that's not what I mean. Like a big one, like here in Destin, you have the perfect place for it. Why wouldn't you do that? And I kind of had, at first I was like, who, me? Like, huh? But then it just kind of stayed in the back of my head. And I was like, okay, well, maybe, I don't know. And so then, not long after that, we went to a ProMac tournament. It was I took my little competition team, our kids, and it was the first time we had been to a ProMac event. And immediately I was like, okay, this is done right. This is professional. This is what I would want mine to look like. If I did it, this is what I would want it to be. It was just very, mats on the floor, it looked great. Customer service was number one. The competitors were number one, and servicing them was the most important thing, and just giving them the experience, that they deserve, and that was the tone, and that was the idea. And I was like, okay, yes, I agree. This is how I would do it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take Kathy's advice. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it with these guys. And then the Destin Open was born shortly thereafter. So yeah.
That's awesome. If there's anything that I've learned in my martial arts career is that when my mom has a martial arts opinion, it's hardly ever incorrect. Like everything that she says always turns out to be true. There's been times that I've taken her advice and won overall grants because of it. And there's been times that I haven't taken her advice and dropped and lost because of it. Right. So I can definitely attest to the fact that she definitely has some good martial arts ideas. And I think so much of the sport karate community is glad that you took that advice and went ahead and made a tournament. And like you mentioned, mentioned, what a better group to do it with than ProMac, obviously run by my father, Eric Rudolph, Ronnie Presley, Greg Ruth, and Toby Ruth. They do a great job of leading ProMac and creating a league that truly is a home designed for competitors. Everything they do is with the competitor's best interest in mind. And that's one of the things that I admire most about everything that ProMac has done, is their mission, which is exactly what you were just explaining. And it may seem weird to some of our viewers that we're talking about all this success at your event before the events even happened, right? But to put that into perspective for all of our viewers, this event has sold out 3 hotels leading up to the event. So we have a pretty good feeling that a lot of people are going to show up, given the fact that 3 hotels have been sold out over this.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what do you think it is that has made the Destin Open so successful so early? Is there any one thing that you look to and you were like, this is the right decision that we made?
Well, I mean, I think it's a few things. For one, it's kind of hard to know what to expect in 2020. But we had a few really successful events, through ProMac. We've been able to kind of come back and find a way to safely hold events. But I think it's a few things. I think, people are chomping at the bit, wanting to compete. I think people, want to get out and do it live. There's been great, online tournaments, but it's just not the same. It's definitely better than nothing. It definitely has kept the ball rolling, but it's not the same, and also, it doesn't hurt to be at the beach. It's not a hard sell to get people to come here, of all places, so I'm grateful, to have a beautiful location here to take advantage of as well. So I definitely think that's a big part of it too.
Oh, for sure. And I remember a few years back when Charlie Lane had the Gator Nationals in Daytona. It was everybody always came to Gators because
Right.
Daytona was such a beautiful location. Unfortunately, obviously, that event isn't being hosted. Not necessarily anymore, but not at the moment. That event's not being hosted. So you're right. It's always great to be able to come and compete at the beach so that, whenever competition's over, you can go hang out at the beach, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, can't agree more with that. Now, with such a well-attended event, right? One thing that a lot of people are going to be wondering is, well, if there's going to be so many people here, how are we going to handle this whole COVID situation, right? And I know that it's going to be surrounded by maybe some even more difficulty than what we saw at the Battle of Atlanta. Because of the Battle of Atlanta, there were state protocols and everything else, whereas Florida has lifted mask mandates and things of that nature. But obviously, your event, your rules, right? So what is the Destin Open going to be doing to keep competitors safe with regard to the COVID-19 pandemic? Because I know that you guys are definitely going to have a great plan in place to take care of that.
Yeah, you're right. That different states have different rules, especially, right now. Florida's pretty lax. However, we wanted to make sure that our competitors are safe. Like I said earlier, competitors, they're number one. They're why we do this, and we want to provide the best experience for them possible. So of course their safety is paramount. And luckily, through, the last few ProMac events in the Battle of Atlanta, we've learned a lot. We've learned what works well. We've learned what we could do better. So what we're doing at my event, we're doing several things to make sure that everybody stays safe. There's going to be temperature checks at the door before you even walk in the facility. There's going to be there's masks for everybody. Even though they're not required in Florida, we're still going to do it anyway. So everyone is required to wear a mask. The judges will also be wearing gloves during sparring on top of that. And we have double the space this year, because we do expect a bigger crowd, believe it or not, than last year. It's crazy, but it's looking that way. So we wanted to make sure that everybody had ample space to space out from one another. So we have double the space literally. And also we extended some of the competition to Friday night. So that way that'll thin out the crowds a little bit as well. So we're doing inside, the spectator seating will be set up in pods, just like we did at the Battle of Atlanta. And that worked really well. In fact, no one moved a single chair because our people are awesome. Which it was incredible. So we're going to do the same thing. That way families can sit together and kind of have space between one another. And then we're also schedule wise, we're running sessions with ProMac. We've been doing that for a while now, and it works really well. And we'll continue to do it even after we don't have to have these protocols anymore, just because it works really well. We've found, and people like it a lot. So the sessions really help to keep the crowd appropriate to the divisions and not have a lot of extra people around. So we're doing everything we can. Sanitation stations throughout the facility, so you can keep your hands nice and clean and all that good stuff. So and like I said, our people are amazing, and so we saw it at the Battle of Atlanta where everybody followed the protocol to the T, and because our martial arts community, we're respectful and we respect each other. And so I have no doubt that it'll be a safe and fun event.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with that more. And anybody that's considering still coming to the Destin Open, there's still time. Go ahead, jump in the car and drive on down. I highly recommend this to anybody. I was at the first event, and I know that they put on just an absolutely incredible event. And I highly recommend it to anybody. If you're on the fence, maybe wanting to get back to a tournament again, definitely go on and head down to the Destin Open this weekend. And I want to touch on one point that you brought up there, Miss Hamm, when you were talking about how you were going to continue, or ProMac at least was going to continue using the session-based format even after these protocols are over. And I think that's a great idea, because an age-old problem for all competitors has always been warming up because you think your division's coming, and then it gets delayed, so you cool off again, and then you warm up and cool down and warm up and cool down. You never know when you're about to run a form. But with the session format, all the competitors are notified, like, hey, your session is going to be at this time, your form is going to happen within this time frame. And so it provides a much better expectation for the competitors to be able to prepare their bodies and be able to perform at the highest level, like you would be able to do in any other professional sport. And so that's something that I think is a huge step forward, just logistics wise, that ProMac is taking. And I think it's an excellent idea, regardless of if we're doing it because of COVID-19 or just doing it for logistic reasons, right? So that was one thing that I wanted to touch on there. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to shift off of talking about the tournament a little bit, because you also have a very successful school. So I guess the way that we'll start that conversation is just take us back to the origin story of that. You kind of told us kind of how you climbed the ladder in the martial arts industry, but how did that big step go when you actually opened your first school? Because I believe that we do have a lot of viewers who are lifetime martial artists that have maybe always been a little bit hesitant, don't want to take the jump, don't want to leave the safe job and open the school, right? So what was it for you that made you make that jump and say, I can do this, and we're going to open a successful school?
Yeah, well, I was, like I said, I kind of got back into working, at schools when I was about 19 or so. And then I moved to Destin and started working at a school that was here at the time. And I always had this group of families that went there that on the side, they would always kind of say things like, Hollie, when are you going to open your own school? When are we going to, and I'd be like, it was kind of another one of those moments, like, who, me? Like, huh? No, it wasn't even on my radar, but they just kept, every now and then, putting that little birdie in my ear. And then the school that school ended up closing kind of abruptly. And so then right after that, I immediately got a phone call from one of those parents, and she's like, okay, so now you're doing it, right? And and I was like, what? I was so overwhelmed at the time, but I was like, maybe, I don't know, and so she's like, well, you at least are going to continue teaching us and our group of friends. So I taught in her backyard for a period of time, and this one particular family, they're amazing, and business wise they're brilliant, and so she kind of coaxed me along, and then I ended up subleasing a racquetball court, an 800 square foot racquetball court in a rundown gym here in town. And all of the kids from the backyard came, and plus others just started, coming out of the woodwork. And I was just blown away. I started it with just this little bitty loan of $5,000. $1,000 and bought all my stuff. And you know, like I said, it was just such a huge thing at the time, but I mean, I really didn't, I was like, well, I guess I'm all in, you know, and I just kind of, it grew from there. And then the gym ended up going out of business. We took over the gym. And then the gym ended up getting bought out and torn down. And so that put us in our building that we have now. And so it's just kind of organically grown over the last 11 years. And but it's just one of those things, you know, sometimes when people nudge you like that, you know, you got to listen sometimes, you know, when sometimes other people believe in you and know what you can do, even when you don't know it yet, you know, and so you got to listen. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one thing that I want to make sure that I exaggerate, or not exaggerate, but emphasize to our audience here is, you know, Ms. Hamm said that, oh, now we're in the location that we're in now, as if it was just like, you know, you're just average karate school location. Don't let her belittle it, right? It's a beautiful location. It's a beautiful school. And it's, you know, I've always thought that the way that a martial arts school should be run is that it's an experience when somebody comes in to take class. It should be a customer service experience, right? It shouldn't be the typical, like, you know, there's like a little front desk and then just the mat and then the instructors, right? You actually have a very nice viewing area for the parents, and it's kept very clean. It looks very professional. You don't feel like you're in just some other old karate school when you walk into Resolute. And I think that that's one of the things that really helps you increase your early retention. When a family first comes into the school and wants to start taking classes, I feel like something that definitely gives you a leg up over any other schools that might be in your area or whatever is your professionalism and the appearance of the product that you put out. So to our audience, she's probably being a little bit humble about, oh, now we have the location we have now. It's a beautiful school. They've done an excellent job with it. And then another factor of your program that I find really interesting is, and so far, you know, you just kind of talked about coming up in the martial arts. Now, you did mention that you're part of the Joe Corley lineage, which obviously there's a sport karate connection there. But you've had world champions like myself and Mackenzie Emery and Ryan George is coming in for a point fighting seminar, Destin Open. You've had several sport karate world champions come into your school and do seminars. You use the flow system, which is the weapons program that Mackenzie Emery and I put together for me for bow staff and Mackenzie for commas, right? So where did the sport karate connection come in for you as far as a business owner, and then obviously going on to be a promoter and promoting the sport karate event? So where did sport karate really kind of make its way into your martial arts career?
Well, really early on, because I was lucky enough to come up in a school that did tournaments, and that was in the sport karate world. So pretty much right away, I started competing locally in Tony Young tournaments, and you know, and other ones around, you know, in the South, and so, you know, and I remember the day that the owner of the school bought the XMA program, and I was just, I mean, that was it. I was like, this is amazing. And so I love that, you know, from the jump too. And then going to the Battle of Atlanta for the first time. I mean, that was like life changing for me, you know, so it's been, I've been in that world, you know, from day one, and loved it from day one. But yeah. And so now, you know, I you know, of course, coming up, I always, you know, idolized certain, you know, competitors that I would see, and, you know, and I look back on that, and I know, you know, how much I learned from them, how much it motivated me. And so now that's why I feel like it's super important for my kids to have that same experience. And even the ones that don't travel and don't, you know, maybe don't see you compete in person, you know, I can bring you here, you know, I can show them, you know, that in other ways, you know, so you can come here and you can teach, and they can look up to you, they can learn from you, be inspired from you, and, you know, and it also helps too to have someone else, you know, come in and say and reinforce the things that you're teaching, you know, I can talk about their stances, and, you know, maybe they don't hear it, but then, oh, magically Jackson Rudolph says it, then they heard it, you know, so I mean, that helps too. But I'm just a big believer in, you know, exposing my students to, to the best, to the top level, and showing them what they can do and what they can be and who they should be aspiring to. So that's why I'm always wanting to bring in people like you and, have seminars at my tournament. And then the flow system that you guys have come out with has really helped tremendously too, because then, I've got your curriculum that I can literally just sit my instructors down in front of, and it can show them not only help skill wise for them, but this is how you break it down. This is how you teach it. This is how you can effectively communicate these concepts, and then I bring you into the school on top of that, and then they see you teach it live, and it just all goes together, and it really inspires the kids and helps with retention, helps them stay motivated and push into that next level.
Thank you very much for the little shout out there, by the way. If anybody is interested in the flow system that's tuning in, like Ms. Hamm said, and like I've said, we do have a Bo staff and a common curriculum featuring myself and Mackenzie Emery. So you can head on over to theflowsystem.tv to check that out and get more information about subscribing to our program and being able to bring that to your students. But you make a really great point there, Ms. Hamm, about, giving the kids role models to look up to, because as martial artists, that's something that our sport, the sport side of what we do, really lacks, right? Like if you play basketball, you want to be LeBron James, or you want to be Steph Curry, right? If you play football, you want to be the Tom Brady or the whoever, right? And the previous generation in martial arts has that, because the previous generation looked up to Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, and back when martial arts movies were the big deal. Now that's kind of been replaced by superhero movies where the connection isn't quite as strong, right? But back when martial arts movies were the thing, then the people that you looked up to were your Bruce Lees and your Chuck Norrises and all of that. And if you were lucky enough to be exposed to sport karate, then you looked up to Bill Superfoot Wallace and Joe Louis and Jeff Smith and that crowd, right? And so this generation somewhat lacks that, because in my opinion, the martial arts community, not the sport karate community, but the overarching martial arts community is so divided between, well, this is the right way to do it and this stuff's fake, or this is the right way to do it and that stuff's not real martial arts, right? And I feel like if everybody could just embrace all martial arts as one thing that is reaching towards a common goal, then whatever style it is that you do, if you're a sport karate school, then like you're saying, Ms. Hamm, you can bring in sport karate world champions to be those role models for those kids. If you're not a sport karate school, do the same thing with MMA. I know there's plenty of MMA fighters that still do seminars and things. I've seen Stephen Wonderboy Thompson be brought out and all kinds of things like that, right? So there's absolutely a way there to give the students in your school role models. You just got to be willing to seek them out and trusting that bringing them into the school will give you those benefits of giving your students role models, which is going to help them with goal setting and is therefore going to increase your retention, because they're going to keep coming back to the school in order to achieve those goals, right? So I just wanted to kind of break that down a little bit and let everybody know that's a message for any style of martial art that you do, whether you're hardcore self-defense or your MMA or your sport karate or whatever it is. That is something that absolutely every type of martial arts school can do. And it's had a great impact on the students at Resolute. You've done a great job of creating some great leaders in your school. One of your main instructors, Miguel Mendoza, does an excellent job. He's been in some of my seminars and I've seen him teach before. He does a fantastic job with the kids. Connor Roberts, who's I coach Team Competitive Edge for the viewers that don't know this, alongside Reed and Cole Presley. Connor Roberts is on our professional karate team, Competitive Edge. He's an excellent role model and an excellent instructor for a lot of your kids. Just some others to mention real quick. You also mentioned Mason Swanson is one of your guys that's coming up, and they're going to be a great role model for your kids as well. So just talk about the value of that in your school and how important it is to develop some of your students to become these leaders and these assistant instructors and these primary instructors for your classes. First, I guess, how do you develop that? Is it something you do intentionally or does it happen organically? And then talk about the benefit of that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's everything. I mean, that is the longevity of your school. It's the heart of your school. So we have a leadership team. And so I handpick students. They have to earn their spot on the leadership team. They have to be an intermediate belt and at least 9. And at that point, they pretty much start into instructor training. So that's the way that I came up to. I started with that really early and, was assisting with classes, at a really young age. And it's they can do so much more than you think that they can. And, to have a 9-year-old at the front of the class leading the stretches in a beginner class, I mean, it's so powerful for the parents to see that. And I want my kid to be able to be up in front of everybody doing that. So, we kind of start them with that, and they do in-depth character training. We talk about how to be a leader, how to be an example for others, how to be strong and to be assertive, and and things like that. And so that program kind of gets them going early. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to have some really amazing teenagers. And well, Miguel's not a teenager anymore. He's growing up on me. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned them, the two of them specifically. Miguel and Connor have been with me. I think Connor started with me when he was barely 5, and Miguel was 8. And they're 16 and 20 now. And it's just, yeah, I'm getting old. So it's incredible, to see, though, to watch them now start to give back and to love giving back. And I think that that's what's most important, that, martial arts gives us so much, and you need to give it back. And so to watch them do that and just enjoy it so much is so great. You mentioned Mason Swanson. He's kind of my next Connor, I think. And and at the Battle of Atlanta, Connor won overalls, and then but then Mason won an underbelt overall. And I think Connor and Miguel, I mean, they lost their minds. They were so excited for him, and I think that they were more excited about his win because they had been coaching him than they were about, than Connor was about his own. And that right there is everything, and I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. That's what it's really about at the end of the day, I think.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's one of the things that I've always been most impressed with, specifically about Miguel and Connor, is that, for me being in the school to teach seminars and things like that, Connor's assisted with a few of my seminars, but I've also seen both Connor and Miguel teach a little bit. And they teach with such passion. You can tell that they love the students and they love what they do. I feel like some martial arts schools, and this is all about the culture of the school, because I feel like some martial arts schools you may go into and, you've got some teenage instructors in there that are maybe, just teaching because they did martial arts as a kid and it was kind of an easy job that they could take on to make a little bit of extra money in high school. And that level of passion isn't there. But specifically with Miguel and Connor, you have found two instructors that truly are passionate about the martial arts, are passionate about the students, and that makes all the difference in the world. And that was facilitated by the culture that you created within the school, right? So that is, in my opinion, the school owner's responsibility to give those students, because that's what Miguel and Connor were at one point, right? You
Right.
give those students the opportunity to fall in love, not just with doing martial arts, but with sharing martial arts and spreading martial arts to the rest of the world. And that's where you get high quality staff and instructors that are going to stay with you for a long time and do really great things for the martial arts and for your community, because that's another big part of being a martial arts school owner, is impacting your community. And that's one great thing that Resolute has done, is you guys have done an excellent job of impacting your community through extremely successful after school programs and summer camps. There's a lot of martial arts schools in America that kind of hang their hats on being able to host after school programs and summer camps to get new kids into the school and get kids to bring their friends into the school and experience those things. So maybe just kind of as business advice in a way, just talk about how have you developed really successful after school programs and summer camps like that?
Well, I'll start by saying it's not easy. It's not for everyone, but we've been fortunate enough to be able to do it and do it well. I was lucky enough to have a mentor early on. He was the instructor at my original school, or he was pretty much the Miguel at my original school, and so he's helped me along the way, and we pretty much grew it organically, starting small. And that's what I recommend. I mean, jumping into this huge program at the very beginning is not what I would recommend. So we started out summer camp. I would just run, a couple of weeks in the summer and do all the work myself in that racquetball court back in the day. And then that grew to me doing more, weeks of the summer. And then it became, once we had the space to be able to do it, then it became, an all day, every day, full-fledged summer camp. And I think the key to that is for it not to be just a karate camp. because you can only do karate for so long during the day, first of all. So if you're going to do all day, that's kind of hard. But on top of that, in order to reach out, in order to get those new kids and introduce martial arts to the community in a way that you wouldn't normally be able to do. Don't get me wrong, they're doing karate a lot during the week, but they're also doing Nerf wars. They're doing a field trip every Friday. They're doing dodgeball. They're doing, and art projects and gymnastics. So it might be one of those things that pulls them in, but then we keep them, and then we get them interested in karate when maybe they never would have tried it. So by the end of the week, they earn their white belt. And a lot of times that kid turns into an after school student. We almost all the time keep them as at least a regular student. So it gives us that opportunity to put karate in front of kids that normally wouldn't have, even thought about it. And then after school wise, we started small and grew that as well. We first just had one van, and went to 2 elementary schools and had 12 kids and picked them up ourselves and did that. And so then that grew, and finally we sold that van, which was a great thing. And it was a great day when we sold that. And we instead switched to a transportation company, which really helps because, I'm a firm believer in you do what you do best and you hire the rest. I'm not in the transportation business. So it's better to hire someone that is. So now we have a company that, they have limos and things like that, but they also have big buses. So they go and they pick up the kids from the school and bring them here for us, which is great. And then also something that, you can look into that I wouldn't have known if my mentor didn't tell me to look into it, is that sometimes the the school system themselves will bus them to you. So actually our middle schoolers we have a bus stop right outside of or just down at the other end of our complex. So the kids get off at that bus stop. We called the transportation department, asked for permission, and they granted it. And so our middle schoolers ride that bus here and are brought to us by the public school system. So you can't do that everywhere, but it doesn't hurt to ask. You can some places. So that's helped too. And so now, but after school and summer camp, like I said, it's not easy, but we've grown it little by little. And now it's allowed us, we have so many kids that we wouldn't normally have because their parents work or they wouldn't be able to get here otherwise. And so it's just allowed us to reach out to so many more kids and be able to service the community and give them a safe place for them to be after school, during that time. Because every kid needs that. I was that kid. So I'm grateful to be able to provide that to the community.
Absolutely. And that's the most important thing for any martial arts school owner, is to focus on your community impact. If you focus on what your real purpose of doing martial arts is, which is to be able to impact lives in a positive way, if you're doing that well, then the business side of it will take care of itself, right? And so exactly. I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind about this conversation, is always be doing things to uplift your community and make your community a better place through the martial arts. And then on the business side of it, it's also important to mention, I feel like so many school owners look at after school programs and summer camps as the payday, right? When in reality, sure, you might make a good chunk of change from doing the summer camp or whatever, but really the purpose is to get those kids exposed to the martial arts so that they keep coming back. You're in it for the long game, not just to have them at the summer camp and make your money off of them and then move on. You want to retain those students, for your business, because that's going to help your business out, but then also kind of going full circle with this, if you retain those students, you're going to be impacting their lives with the martial arts for the long term, which is what is so incredibly important. And so now for our last topic, I want to go ahead and shift to one of the other many hats that you wear. We've talked about being a school owner, being an instructor, being a promoter, running an after school program, all of these things. But when you're not doing all of those things, you also do a great job of volunteering and helping out at so many other tournaments as a judge. I've seen you in night shows at world level tournaments, judging the forms and weapons divisions, judging the fighting divisions. You're always there to help out. So for any of the competitors that might be watching, especially for forms and weapons, weapons. It's hard to give judging advice for fighting because you call whatever you see, right? But for forms and weapons, a lot of different judges look for different things. So when you're sitting there and you're watching a forms and weapons routine, just for the competitors that may be tuning in, what is it that you're looking for most to decide who's going to come out on top?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I want to see strong basics. I want to see stances. I want to see chambers. I want to see rechambers on your kicks. I want to see properly formed hands and feet, just the basics. I tell my kids all the time, what you're doing, it would need to work. Like you need power and you need, proper technique. So, that foundation is what I look for first. I mean, you can have great tricks, but if your stances aren't solid, then that really doesn't help you, in my eyes. So that's first and foremost, the foundation is number one, I think. Then also, good technique and execution in everything that you do. What's in your form should be clean. If your trick isn't quite clean yet, it shouldn't be in there. Not yet. So what you're doing should be clean. And then beyond that, of course, there's power and speed and snap and all that. But I really love a competitor that owns the ring, that walks in, that has swag, that has confidence, that makes you stop and watch them, makes the audience stop and watch them, that has charisma, that presence, that stage presence, and that power, and that they just command the ring. That I think is great too, and I always appreciate that. I appreciate strong athleticism, and I appreciate charisma and stage presence as well.
Mm-hmm. You're preaching to the choir. I couldn't agree with that anymore. And that's one thing that I try to get my students to understand is that at the end of the day, you are putting on a show. Whether you're doing a traditional routine, whether you're doing an extreme routine with 100 flips in it, you are putting on a show. So at the end of the day, the number one focus for you, outside of making sure that you maintain good technique, which you shouldn't have to focus on because you should train to the point that your good technique is mindless, right? But when you're in the ring, you should be focused on putting on a show, right? And the other side of that, and what you mentioned first, is that good foundational technique, because I know that we get a lot of people on the page that maybe are not the biggest fans of sport karate, that then will say like, oh, they're cheerleaders and gymnasts and baton twirlers and all this. And while that may be true of some sport karate competitors that don't practice the basics as they should, those who you see on stage and those who are winning, you're hearing it from a judge right here, the judges value the basics and the traditional martial arts technique first before they worry about any of the releases of the weapon or the flips and the tricks and things like that. So all of those things are in there because it is a performance, because we need to do things that are appealing to someone who's not a martial artist. Just like if you watch a kung fu movie and you see Bruce Lee do some type of aerial kick to knock somebody out, that's not something that Bruce Lee would have actually used in a fight, right? That is stunt choreography, and that's what inspired so many of the previous generation to get into the martial arts as well. So now in the present day in sport karate competitions, those cool tricks are what's going to make somebody that doesn't know anything about martial arts want to do martial arts, and in turn they will learn the foundational basics that they will need to defend themselves, right? And that's one thing that I'm a firm believer in, is that everybody that you see on stage at a sport karate tournament, and Miss Hamm, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the audience here. Everybody that you see on stage, because I know you already know this, everybody you see on stage at a sport karate tournament will definitely know how to defend themselves. That's how they got their black belt in the first place. And that's where all of the foundational skills that they're using in their stances, their chop punch combinations, their striking combinations, their cut combinations, depending on what weapon they're using, all of that comes first, and all of the tricks get added in on top of that. So I'm getting on my soapbox a little bit, but I just wanted to get that out, because whenever I have an opportunity for a judge to preach that, I always want to make sure that everybody understands that the basics, the traditional martial arts is always what is held in the highest regard. And I haven't had a judge yet that hasn't said that, right? And then, for you at least, comes the performance. And then after the performance value, you worry about the difficulty of the tricks. And really, that just determines who's going to place one ahead of another, right? If two competitors both have great basics and they both own the ring, whose form was harder, right? At the end of the day, that's all it can come down to. So I just wanted to make sure that for any competitors watching, that you got that perspective and tried to apply that in your own routines. And hey, apply it at the Destin Open. Head on down to the Destin Open and go ahead and use some of that advice from the promoter herself for you guys to go ahead and head on down there and be successful. So Ms. Hamm, thank you so much for your time. This has been an awesome show. We've covered so many different topics. Any closing thoughts or comments that you want to leave?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have you come and teach your seminar at the Destin Open on Friday. So if you're coming, make sure that you're in that. And then Ryan George will be doing a sparring seminar as well. And then competition starts after that. So just make sure you don't miss that if you're coming. So, and I'm excited to see everyone this weekend. I'll see you in the place.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I can't
Yep.
wait. It's going to be an awesome time, and I hope that everybody watching is looking forward to it as well. And if you guys are interested in any updates on who's winning some of the adult grands, things of that nature, we will be covering some of the results on Black Belt Magazine, so stay tuned to blackbeltmag.com for all news and updates about all the major events in sport karate. And with Destin Open coming up this weekend, that is certainly one of them. So thank you to everybody that's tuning in. Thank you once again, Ms. Hamm, for your time, and thank you to Black Belt Magazine for making all of this possible. Like I say at almost every show, I mean, this just started out as something that I did because I love sport karate and I love talking about martial arts, and I was just doing it, you know, for the 100 people or so that I thought would care to listen. And now we have this excellent platform, and that is all thanks to Black Belt Magazine. So thank you very much to Black Belt Magazine and everybody tuning in here on the Black Belt Magazine Facebook page. I'm Jackson Rudolph. This has been episode 46 of the Jackson Rudolph podcast, and I'll see you next time.